Although explored by the Spanish early in the 16th century, initial attempts at colonizing Costa Rica proved unsuccessful due to a combination of factors, including disease from mosquito-infested swamps, brutal heat, resistance by natives, and pirate raids. It was not until 1563 that a permanent settlement of Cartago was established in the cooler, fertile Central Highlands. The area remained a colony for some 2.5 centuries. In 1821, Costa Rica became one of several Central American provinces that jointly declared their independence from Spain. 2 years later it joined the United Provinces of Central America, but this federation disintegrated in 1838, at which time Costa Rica proclaimed its sovereignty and independence. Since the late 19th century, only 2 brief periods of violence have marred the country's democratic development. On the 1st of December 1948, Costa Rica dissolved its armed forces. Although it still maintains a large agricultural sector, Costa Rica has expanded its economy to include strong technology and tourism industries. The standard of living is relatively high. Land ownership is widespread.
Costa Rica summary.
Adobe PDF.
Geography.
Costa Rica.
Location: Central America, bordering both the Caribbean Sea and the North Pacific Ocean, between Nicaragua and Panama.
Geographic coordinates: 10:00 8400W.
Map references: Central America and the Caribbean.
Area total:
51,100 square kilometers.
Land:
51,060 square kilometers.
Water:
40 square kilometers.
Note:
Includes Isla del Coco.
Country comparison to the world:
130.
Area comparative: slightly smaller than West Virginia.
Area comparison map.
Area comparison map.
Land boundaries: total
661 kilometers.
Border countries: 2.
Nicaragua 313 kilometers, Panama 348 kilometers.
Coastline: 1,290 kilometers.
Maritime claims: territorial sea
12.
Exclusive economic zone
200.
Continental shelf
200.
Climate: tropical and subtropical. Dry season: December to April. Rainy season: May to November. Cooler in highlands.
Terrain: coastal plains separated by rugged mountains including over 100 volcanic cones, of which several are major active volcanoes.
Elevation: mean elevation
746 m.
Lowest point:
Pacific Ocean 0 m.
Highest point:
Cerro Chirripó 3,819 m.
Natural resources: hydropower.
Land use: agricultural land
37.1%.
Arable land
4.9%, permanent crops
6.7%, /permanent pasture
25.5%.
Forest,
51.5%.
other,
11.4%.
irrigated land, 1,015 square kilometers.
Population distribution. Roughly half of the nation's population resides in urban areas. The capital of San Jose is the largest city and home to approximately 1/5 of the population.
Natural hazards, occasional earthquakes, hurricanes along Atlantic coast, frequent flooding of lowlands at onset of rainy season and landslides, active volcanoes.
Volcanism.
Arenal, 1,670 m, which erupted in 2010, is the most active volcano in Costa Rica. A 1968 eruption destroyed the town of Tabacón, Irazu, 3,432 m, situated just east of San Jose, has the potential to spew ash over the capital city as it did between 1963 and 1965. Other historically active volcanoes include Miravalles, Poas, Rincón de la Villa, and Torralba.
Environment, current issues. Deforestation and land use change, largely a result of the clearing of land for cattle ranching and agriculture, soil erosion, coastal marine pollution, fisheries protection, solid waste management, air pollution.
Environment, international agreements, Party to.
Biodiversity, climate change Kyoto Protocol, desertification, endangered species, environmental modification, hazardous wastes, law of the sea, marine dumping, ozone layer protection, wetlands, whaling.
Signed, but not ratified.
Marine life conservation.
Geography. Note, 4 volcanoes, 2 of them active, rise near the capital of San Jose in the center of the country. One of the volcanoes, Irazu, erupted destructively in 1963-65.
People and society.
Costa Rica.
Population 4,987,142.
Country comparison to the world.
123.
Nationality, noun.
Costa Ricans.
Adjective.
Costa Rican.
Ethnic groups. White or mestizo 83.6%, mulatto 6.7%, indigenous 2.4%, black of African descent 1.1%, other 1.1%, non 2.9%, unspecified 2.2%.
Languages. Spanish, official, English.
Religions. Roman Catholic 71.8%, Evangelical and Pentecostal 12.3%, other Protestant 2.6%, Jehovah's Witness 0.5%, other 2.4%, non 10.4%.
Demographic profile. Costa Rica's political stability, high standard of living, and well-developed social benefits system set it apart from its Central American neighbors. Through the government's sustained social spending, almost 20% of GDP annually, Costa Rica has made tremendous progress toward achieving its goal of providing universal access to education, healthcare, clean water, sanitation, and electricity. Since the 1970s, expansion of these services has led to a rapid decline in infant mortality, an increase in life expectancy at birth, and a sharp decrease in the birth rate. The average number of children born per woman has fallen from about 7 in the 1960s to 3.5 in the early 1980s to below replacement level today. Costa Rica's poverty rate is lower than in most Latin American countries, but it has stalled at around 20% for almost 2 decades.
Costa Rica is a popular regional immigration destination because of its job opportunities and social programs. Almost 9% of the population is foreign-born, with Nicaraguans comprising nearly 3/4 of the foreign population. Many Nicaraguans who perform unskilled seasonal labor enter Costa Rica illegally or overstay their visas, which continues to be a source of tension. Less than 3% of Costa Rica's population lives abroad. The overwhelming majority of expatriates have settled in the United States after completing a university degree or in order to work in a highly skilled field.
Age structure. 0-14 years.
22.43%. Male 572,172. Female 546,464.
15-24 years.
15.94%. Male 405,515. Female 389,433.
25-54 years.
44.04%. Male 1,105,944. Female 1,090,434.
55-64 years.
9.48%. Male 229,928. Female 242,696.
65 years and over.
8.11%. Male 186,531. Female 218,025.
Population pyramid.
Population pyramid.
Dependency ratios.
Dependency ratios are a measure of the age structure of a population. They relate the number of individuals that are likely to be economically dependent on the support of others. Dependency ratios contrast the ratio of youths, ages 0 to 14, and the elderly, ages 65 plus, to the number of those in the working age group, ages 15 to 64. Changes in the dependency ratio provide an indication of potential social support requirements resulting from changes in population age structures, as fertility leave. More dependency ratios. Field listing.
Total dependency ratio.
45.4.
Youth dependency ratio.
32.4.
Elderly dependency ratio.
12.9.
Potential support ratio.
7.7.
Median age, total.
31.7 years.
Male.
31.2 years.
Female.
32.2 years.
Country comparison to the world.
109.
Population growth rate, 1.13%.
Country comparison to the world.
95.
Birth rate, 15.3 births out of 1,000 population.
Country comparison to the world.
121.
Death rate, 4.8 deaths out of 1,000 population.
Country comparison to the world.
200.
Net migration rate, 0.8 migrant, s, out of 1,000 population.
Country comparison to the world.
65.
Population distribution. Roughly half of the nation's population resides in urban areas. The capital of San Jose is the largest city and home to approximately 1/5 of the population.
Urbanization. Urban population.
79.3% of total population.
Rate of urbanization.
1.5% annual rate of change.
Major urban areas. Population 1.358 million. San Jose, capital.
Sex ratio, at birth.
1.05 male every 1 female.
0-14 years.
1.05 male every 1 female.
15-24 years.
1.04 male every 1 female.
25-54 years.
1.01 male every 1 female.
55-64 years.
0.95 male every 1 female.
65 years and over.
0.86 male every 1 female.
Total population.
1.01 male every 1 female.
Maternal mortality rate. 25 deaths/100,000 live births.
Country comparison to the world.
122.
Infant mortality rate, total.
7.8 deaths out of 1,000 live births.
Male.
8.6 deaths out of 1,000 live births.
Female.
7.1 deaths out of 1,000 live births.
Country comparison to the world.
153.
Life expectancy at birth, total population.
78.9 years.
Male.
76.2 years.
Female.
81.7 years.
Country comparison to the world.
55.
Total fertility rate, 1.89 children born/woman.
Country comparison to the world.
135.
Contraceptive prevalence rate, 76.2%.
Health expenditures, 9.3% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
33.
Physicians density, 1.15 physicians out of 1,000 population.
Hospital bed density, 1.1 beds out of 1,000 population.
Drinking water source, improved.
Urban.
99.6% of population.
Rural.
91.9% of population.
Total.
97.8% of population.
Unimproved.
Urban.
0.4% of population.
Rural.
8.1% of population.
Total.
2.2% of population.
Sanitation facility access, improved.
Urban.
95.2% of population.
Rural.
92.3% of population.
Total.
94.5% of population.
Unimproved.
Urban.
4.8% of population.
Rural.
7.7% of population.
Total.
5.5% of population.
HIV/AIDS, adult prevalence rate, 0.4%.
Country comparison to the world.
70.
HIV/AIDS, people living with HIV/AIDS, 13,000.
Country comparison to the world.
93.
HIV/AIDS, deaths.
Less than 200. Major infectious diseases, degree of risk.
Intermediate.
Food or waterborne diseases.
Bacterial diarrhea.
Vector-borne diseases.
Dengue fever.
Note.
Active local transmission of Zika virus by Aedes species mosquitoes has been identified in this country. As of August 2016, it poses an important risk. A large number of cases possible among U.S. citizens if bitten by an infective mosquito. Other less common ways to get Zika are through sex, via blood transfusion, or during pregnancy, in which the pregnant woman passes Zika virus to her fetus.
Obesity. Adult prevalence rate, 25.7%.
Country comparison to the world.
48.
Children under the age of 5 years underweight, 1.1%.
Country comparison to the world.
121.
Education expenditures, 7.4% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
11.
Literacy. Definition.
Age 15 and over can read and write.
Total population.
97.8%.
Male.
97.7%.
Female.
97.8%.
School life expectancy. Primary to tertiary education. Total.
15 years.
Male.
15 years.
Female.
16 years.
Unemployment. Youth ages 15-24. Total.
20.6%.
Male.
17.6%.
Female.
25.9%.
Country comparison to the world.
61.
Government.
Costa Rica.
Country name. Conventional long form.
Republic of Costa Rica.
Conventional short form.
Costa Rica.
Local long form.
República de Costa Rica.
Local short form.
Costa Rica.
Etymology.
The name means rich coast in Spanish and was first applied in the early colonial period of the 16th century.
Government type. Presidential republic.
Capital. Name.
San Jose.
Geographic coordinates.
956 N. 8405W.
Time difference.
UTC 6. 1 hour behind Washington, D.C. During Standard Time.
Administrative divisions. 7 provinces. Provincias. Singular. Provincia. Alajuela. Cartago. Guanacaste. Heredia. Limon. Punta Arenas. San Jose.
Independence. The 15th of September 1821. From Spain.
National holiday. Independence Day, the 15th of September, 1821.
Constitution. History.
Many previous. Latest effective the 8th of November 1949.
Amendments.
Proposals require the signatures of at least 10 Legislative Assembly members or by petition of at least 5% of qualified voters. Consideration of proposals requires 2/3 majority approval in each of 3 readings by the Assembly, followed by preparation of the proposal as a legislative bill and its approval by simple majority of the Assembly. Passage requires at least 2/3 majority vote of the Assembly membership. A referendum is required only if approved by at least 2/3 of the Assembly. Amended many times, last in 2015.
Legal system. Civil law system based on Spanish Civil Code. Judicial review of legislative acts in the Supreme Court.
International Law Organization participation. Accepts compulsory ICJ jurisdiction. Accepts SIC jurisdiction.
Citizenship. Citizenship by birth.
Yes.
Citizenship by descent only.
Yes.
Dual citizenship recognized.
Yes.
Residency requirement for naturalization.
7 years.
Suffrage. 18 years of age. Universal and compulsory.
Executive branch. Chief of State.
President Carlos Alvarado Quezada, since the 8th of May 2018. First Vice President Epsi Campbell Barr, since the 8th of May 2018. Second Vice President Marvin Rodriguez Cordero, since the 8th of May 2018. Note: The President is both Chief of State and Head of Government.
Head of Government.
President Carlos Alvarado Quezada, since the 8th of May 2018. First Vice President Epsi Campbell Barr, since the 8th of May 2018. Second Vice President Marvin Rodriguez Cordero, since the 8th of May 2018.
Cabinet.
Cabinets elected by the President.
Elections/appointments.
President and Vice Presidents directly elected on the same ballot by modified majority popular vote, 40% threshold, for a 4-year term, eligible for non-consecutive terms. Election last held on the 4th of February 2018 with a runoff on the 1st of April 2018. Next to be held in February 2022.
Election results.
Carlos Alvarado Quezada elected president in second round, percent of vote in first round. Fabricio Alvarado Munoz, PRN 25%, Carlos Alvarado Quezada, PAC 21.6%, Antonio Alvarez, PLN 18.6%, Rodolfo Paiza, PUSC 16%, Juan Diego Castro, P 9.5%, Rodolfo Hernandez, PRS 4.9%, other 4.4%, of vote in second round, Carlos Alvarado Quezada, PAC 60.7%, Fabricio Alvarado Munoz, PRN 39.3%.
Legislative branch. Description.
Unicameral Legislative Assembly or Assembly Legislativa, 57 seats. Members directly elected in multi-seat constituencies, corresponding to the country's 7 provinces, by closed list proportional representation vote. Members serve 4-year terms.
Elections.
Last held on the 4th of February 2018. Next to be held in February 2022.
Election results.
Percent of vote by party, 19 Polish zlotys. 5%, PRN 18.2%. PAC 16.3%, PUSC 14.6%, PIN 7.7%, PRS 4.2%, PFA 4%, ADC 2.5%, ML 2.3%, PAYS 2.3%, PNG 2.2%, other 6.2%, seats by party, 17 Polish zlotys, PRN 14, PAC 10, PUSC 9. PIN 4, PRS 2, PFA 1, composition, men 31, women 26%, of women 45.6%.
Judicial branch. Highest courts.
Supreme Court of Justice, consists of 22 judges organized into 3 cassation chambers each with 5 judges and the Constitutional Chamber with 7 judges.
Judge selection in term of office.
Supreme Court of Justice judges elected by the National Assembly for 8-year terms with renewal decided by the National Assembly.
Subordinate courts.
Appellate courts, trial courts, first instance and justice of the peace courts, Superior Electoral Tribunal.
Political parties and leaders. Accessibility without exclusion or PASE. Oscar Andres Lopez Arias.
Broad Front, Frente Amplio, or PFA. Ana Patricia Mora Castellanos.
Christie in Democratic Alliance, or ADC. Mario Redondo Poveda.
Citizen Action Party or PAC. Marta Eugenia Solano Arias.
Costa Rican Renewal Party or PRC. Justo Orozco Alvarez.
Libertarian Movement Party or ML, Victor Danilo Cubero Corrales.
National Integration Party or PIN. Walter Munoz Cespedes.
National Liberation Party or PLN, Jorge Julio Paternizants.
National Restoration Party or PRN. Carlos Luis Avendano Calvo.
New Generation or PNG, Sergio Mana.
Patriotic Alliance. Jorge Raya Westover.
Social Christian Republican Party or PRS, Dragos Dolanescu Valenciano.
Social Christian Unity Party or PUSC. Pedro Munoz Fonseca.
International Organization Participation, PKI, CACM, CD, SULUC, FAO, G77, IADP, IAIA, IBRD, ICAO, ICC, National Committees, ICT, ICRM, IDA, IFAT, IFC, IFX, ILO, IMF, IMO, IMSO, Interpol, IOC, IAM, IPU, ISO, ITSO, ITU, ITUC, NGOs, LS, LIA, Observer, MEGA, NAM, Observer, OAS, OIF, Observer, OpenL, OPCW, Pacific Alliance, Observer, PCA, SICA, UN, UNCTAD, UNESCO, UNHCR, UNIDO, Union Latina, UNTO, UPU, WCO, WFTU, NGOs, WHO, WIPO, WMO, WTO.
Diplomatic representation in the U.S. Chief of Mission.
Ambassador Fernando Lorca Castro, since the 17th of September 2018.
Chancery.
2114 South Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20008.
Telephone.
12024802200.
Fax.
12022654795.
Consulate. S. General.
Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, Washington, D.C.
Consulate. S.
St. Paul, MN, San Juan, Puerto Rico, Tucson, as.
Diplomatic representation from the U.S. Chief of Mission.
Ambassador Sharon Day, since the 5th of October 2017.
Embassy.
Col 98 via 104, Pavas, San Jose.
Mailing address.
Apoa 34020.
Telephone.
506 25 19 to 2000.
Fax.
506 25 19 to 2305.
Flag description. 5 horizontal bands of blue, top, white, red, double width, white, and blue, with the coat of arms in a white elliptical disc placed toward the hoist side of the red band. Costa Rica retained the earlier blue-white-blue flag of Central America until 1848 when, in response to revolutionary activity in Europe, it was decided to incorporate the French colours into the national flag and a central red stripe was added. Today the blue colour is said to stand for the sky, opportunity, and perseverance, white denotes peace, happiness, and wisdom, while red represents the bloodshed for freedom, as well as the generosity and vibrancy of the people.
Note.
Somewhat resembles the flag of North Korea, similar to the flag of Thailand but with the blue and red colours reversed.
National symbols. Yaguiro, clay-coloured robin, national colours.
Blue, white, red.
National anthem. Name.
Himno Nacional de Costa Rica, National Anthem of Costa Rica.
Lyrics. Music.
Jose Maria Zeledon Breen / Manuel Maria Gutierrez.
Note.
Adopted 1949. The anthem's music was originally written for an 1853 welcome ceremony for diplomatic missions from the US and UK. The lyrics were added in 1903.
Economy.
Costa Rica.
Economy. Overview. Since 2010, Costa Rica has enjoyed strong and stable economic growth -3.8% in 2017. Exports of bananas, coffee, sugar, and beef are the backbone of its commodity exports. Various industrial and processed agricultural products have broadened exports in recent years, as have high-value added goods, including medical devices. Costa Rica's impressive biodiversity also makes it a key destination for ecotourism.
Foreign investors remain attracted by the country's political stability and relatively high education levels, as well as the incentives offered in the free trade zones. Costa Rica has attracted one of the highest levels of foreign direct investment per capita in Latin America. The US Central American Dominican Republic Free Trade Agreement, CAFTA, which became effective for Costa Rica in 2009, helped increase foreign direct investment in key sectors of the economy, including insurance and telecommunication. However, poor infrastructure, high energy costs, a complex bureaucracy, weak investor protection, and uncertainty of contract enforcement impede greater investment.
Costa Rica's economy also faces challenges due to a rising fiscal deficit, rising public debt, and relatively low levels of domestic revenue. Poverty has remained around 20 to 25% for nearly 20 years, and the government's strong social safety net has eroded due to increased constraints on its expenditures. Costa Rica's credit rating was downgraded from stable to negative in 2015 and again in 2017, upping pressure on lending rates, which could hurt small business, on the budget deficit, which could hurt infrastructure development, and on the rate of return on investment. which could soften foreign direct investment, FDI. Unlike the rest of Central America, Costa Rica is not highly dependent on remittances, which represented just 1% of GDP in 2016, but instead relies on FDI, which accounted for 5.1% of GDP.
GDP, purchasing power parity, $83.94 billion,
$81.27 billion.
$77.96 billion.
Note.
Data in 2017 dollars.
Country comparison to the world.
93.
GDP, official exchange rate, $58.27 billion.
GDP, real growth rate, 3.3%.
4.2%.
3.6%.
Country comparison to the world.
104.
GDP, per capita. PPP, $16,900.
$16,600.
$16,100.
Note.
Data are in 2017 dollars.
Country comparison to the world.
104.
Gross national saving, 15.1% of GDP.
16.1% of GDP.
15% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
135.
GDP, composition, by end use. Household consumption.
64.2%.
Government consumption.
17.3%.
Investment in fixed capital.
17.1%.
Investment in inventories.
1%.
Exports of goods and services.
33.3%.
Imports of goods and services.
Minus 32.9%.
GDP, composition, by sector of origin. Agriculture.
5.5%.
Industry.
20.6%.
Services.
73.9%.
Agriculture, products. Bananas, pineapples, coffee, melons, ornamental plants, sugar, corn, rice, beans, potatoes, beef, poultry, dairy, timber.
Industries, medical equipment, food processing, textiles and clothing, construction materials, fertilizer, plastic products.
Industrial production growth rate, 1.3%.
Country comparison to the world.
147.
Labor force, 2.229 million.
Note.
Official estimate, excludes Nicaraguans living in Costa Rica.
Country comparison to the world.
121.
Labor force, by occupation. Agriculture.
14%.
Industry.
22%.
Services.
64%.
Unemployment rate, 8.1%.
9.5%.
Country comparison to the world.
117.
Population below poverty line, 21.7%.
Household income or consumption by percentage share. Lowest 10%.
1.5%.
Highest 10%.
36.9%.
Distribution of family income. Gini index. 48.5.
49.2.
Country comparison to the world.
22.
Budget. Revenues.
8.357 billion.
Expenditures.
11.92 billion.
Taxes and other revenues. 14.3% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
200.
Budget surplus, plus, or deficit, dash, minus 6.1% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
185.
Public debt. 48.9% of GDP.
44.9% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
105.
Fiscal year. Calendar year.
Inflation rate, consumer prices, 1.6%.
0%.
Country comparison to the world.
89.
Central bank discount rate, 3.5%.
21.5%. The 31st of December 2010.
Country comparison to the world.
102.
Commercial bank prime lending rate, 11.37%.
11.64%.
Country comparison to the world.
71.
Stock of Naira money, $5.356 billion.
$5.63 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
100.
Stock of broad money, $5.356 billion.
$5.63 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
103.
Stock of domestic credit, $41.04 billion.
$38.21 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
69.
Market value of publicly traded shares, $2.015 billion.
$1.443 billion.
$1.445 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
99.
Current account balance, minus $1.692 billion.
Minus $1.326 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
160.
Exports, $10.81 billion.
$10.15 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
91.
Exports, partners, US 40.9%, Belgium 6.3%, Panama 5.6%, Netherlands 5.6%, Nicaragua 5.1%, Guatemala 5%.
Exports, commodities, bananas, pineapples, coffee, melons, ornamental plants, sugar, beef, seafood, electronic components, medical equipment.
Imports, $15.15 billion.
$14.53 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
90.
Imports, commodities, raw materials, consumer goods, capital equipment, petroleum, construction materials.
Imports, partners, US 38.1%, China 13.1%, Mexico 7.3%.
Reserves of foreign exchange and gold, $7.15 billion.
$7.574 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
86.
Debt, external, $26.83 billion.
$24.3 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
86.
Stock of direct foreign investment, at home, $33.92 billion.
$31.84 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
68.
Stock of direct foreign investment, abroad, $4.007 billion.
$3.781 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
78.
Exchange rates, Costa Rican colones, CRC, per US dollar.
573.5.
544.74.
544.74.
534.57.
538.32.
Energy.
Costa Rica.
Electricity access. Population without electricity.
24,362.
Electrification. Total population.
99.5%.
Electrification. Urban areas.
99.9%.
Electrification. Rural areas.
98.3%.
Electricity production. 10.79 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
100.
Electricity consumption 9.812 billion kWh.
Country comparison to the world.
98.
Electricity exports 643 million.
Country comparison to the world.
64.
Electricity imports 807 million kWh.
Country comparison to the world.
72.
Electricity installed generating capacity 3.584 million.
Country comparison to the world.
94.
Electricity from fossil fuels 18% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
196.
Electricity from nuclear fuels 0% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
72.
Electricity from hydroelectric plants 64% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
25.
Electricity from other renewable sources 18% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
48.
Crude oil production 0 barrel day.
Country comparison to the world.
123.
Crude oil exports 0 barrels/day.
Country comparison to the world.
109.
Crude oil imports 0 barrel day.
Country comparison to the world.
115.
Crude oil proved reserves 0 barrels.
Country comparison to the world.
120.
Refined petroleum products production 0 barrel day.
Country comparison to the world.
134.
Refined petroleum products consumption 53,000 barrels/day.
Country comparison to the world.
100.
Refined petroleum products, exports, 0 barrel, day.
Country comparison to the world.
147.
Refined petroleum products imports 51,320 barrels/day.
Country comparison to the world.
80.
Natural gas, production, 0 cubic meters.
Country comparison to the world.
120.
Natural gas consumption 0 qm.
Country comparison to the world.
136.
Natural gas, exports, 0 cubic meters.
Country comparison to the world.
88.
Natural gas imports 0 qm.
Country comparison to the world.
111.
Natural gas, proved reserves, 0 cubic meters.
Country comparison to the world.
125.
Carbon dioxide emissions from consumption of energy 7.653 million.
Country comparison to the world.
120.
Communications.
Costa Rica.
Telephones, fixed lines, total subscriptions.
843,148.
Subscriptions per 100 inhabitants.
17.
Country comparison to the world.
79.
Telephones, mobile cellular, total subscriptions.
8,840,342.
Subscriptions per 100 inhabitants.
179.
Country comparison to the world.
88.
Telephone system, general assessment.
Good domestic telephone service in terms of breadth of coverage. In recent years, growth has been achieved from liberalization of the telecom sector and has seen substantial expansion in all sectors. Costa Rica's broadband market is the most advanced in Central America, with the highest broadband penetration for this subregion. Broadband penetration does lag behind many South American countries. With the implementation of number portability, there is greater opportunity for increased competition in the future.
Domestic.
Point-to-point and point-to-multi-point microwave, fiber optic, and coaxial cable link rural areas. Internet service is available. 17 per 100 fixed line, 179 per 100 mobile cellular.
International.
Country code -506. Landing points for the Americas region Caribbean ring system. Arcos 1, Maya 1, and the Pan-American crossing submarine cables that provide links to South and Central America, parts of the Caribbean, and the US. Connected to Central American microwave system. Satellite earth stations to Intelsat. Atlantic Ocean.
Broadcast media. Multiple privately owned TV stations and one publicly owned TV station. Cable network services are widely available. More than 100 privately owned radio stations and a public radio network.
Internet country code.
Internet users, total.
3,217,277.
Percent of population.
66%.
Country comparison to the world.
95.
Broadband, fixed subscriptions, total.
744,059.
Subscriptions per 100 inhabitants.
15.
Country comparison to the world.
74.
Transportation.
Costa Rica.
National Air Transport System. Number of registered air carriers.
1.
Inventory of registered aircraft operated by air carriers.
39.
Annual passenger traffic on registered air carriers.
1,617,075.
Annual freight traffic on registered air carriers.
9,284,116.
Civil aircraft registration country code prefix T.
Airports 161.
Country comparison to the world.
35.
Airports, with paved runways, total.
47.
2,438 to 3,047 meters.
2.
1,524 to 2,437 meters.
2.
914 to 1,523 meters.
27.
Under 914 meters.
16.
Airports, with unpaved runways, total
114,
914 to 1,523 meters,
18,
under 914 meters,
96,
pipelines, 662 kilometers, refined products,
railways, total
278 kilometers,
narrow gauge,
278 kilometers, 1.067 meter gauge.
note,
The entire rail network fell into disrepair and out of use at the end of the 20th century. Since 2005, certain sections of rail have been rehabilitated.
country comparison to the world,
123.
roadways, waterways, 730 kilometers, seasonally navigable by small craft,
Country comparison to the world.
74.
Merchant marine.
Merchant marine may be defined as all ships engaged in the carriage of goods, or all commercial vessels, as opposed to all non-military ships, which excludes tugs, fishing vessels, offshore oil rigs, etc.
Total.
11.
By type.
General cargo 2, other 9.
Country comparison to the world.
148.
Ports and terminals. Major seaports.
Atlantic Ocean, Caribbean, Puerto Limon.
Pacific Ocean. Caldera.
Military and security.
Costa Rica.
Military branches, no regular military forces, Ministry of Public Security, Government, and Police.
Transnational issues.
Costa Rica.
Disputes. International. Costa Rica and Nicaragua regularly file border dispute cases over the delimitations of the San Juan River and the northern tip of Calero Island to the International Court of Justice, ICJ. In 2009, the ICJ ruled that Costa Rican vessels carrying out police activities could not use the river, but official Costa Rican vessels providing essential services to riverside inhabitants and Costa Rican tourists could travel freely on the river. In 2011, the ICJ provisionally ruled that both countries must remove personnel from the disputed area. In 2013, the ICJ rejected Nicaragua's 2012 suit to halt Costa Rica's construction of a highway paralleling the river on the grounds of irreparable environmental damage. In 2013, the ICJ, regarding the disputed territory, ordered that Nicaragua should refrain from dredging or canal construction and refill and repair damage caused by trenches connecting the river to the Caribbean, and upheld its 2010 ruling that Nicaragua must remove all personnel. In early 2014, Costa Rica brought Nicaragua to the ICJ over offshore oil concessions in the disputed region.
Refugees and internally displaced persons. Refugees. Country of origin.
10,041. Venezuela. Economic and political crisis. Includes Venezuelans who have claimed asylum or have received alternative legal stay.
Stateless persons.
71.
Trafficking in persons. Current situation.
Costa Rica is a source, transit, and destination country for men, women, and children subjected to sex trafficking and forced labor. Costa Rican women and children, as well as those from Nicaragua, the Dominican Republic, and other Latin American countries, are sex trafficked in Costa Rica. Child sex tourism is a particular problem, with offenders coming from the US and Europe. Men and children from Central America, including indigenous Panamanians, and Asia, are exploited in agriculture, construction, fishing, and commerce. Nicaraguans transit Costa Rica to reach Panama, where some are subjected to forced labor or sex trafficking.
Tier rating. Tier 2 watch list. Costa Rica does not fully comply with the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking. However, it is making significant efforts to do so. Anti-trafficking law enforcement efforts declined in 2014, with fewer prosecutions and no convictions and no actions taken against complicit government personnel. Some officials conflated trafficking with smuggling, and authorities reported the diversion of funds to combat smuggling hindered anti-trafficking efforts. The government identified more victims than the previous year but did not make progress in ensuring that victims received adequate protective services. Specialized services were limited and mostly provided by NGOs without government support, even from a dedicated fund for anti-trafficking efforts. Victims' services were virtually non-existent outside of the capital, Costa Rica, officially the Republic of Costa Rica, Spanish, República de Costa Rica, is a country in Central America, bordered by Nicaragua to the north, the Caribbean Sea to the northeast, Panama to the southeast, the Pacific Ocean to the southwest, and Ecuador to the south of Cocos Island. It has a population of around 5 million in a land area of 51,060 square kilometers, 19,714 square miles. An estimated 333,980 people live in the capital and largest city, San Jose, with around 2 million people in the surrounding metropolitan area. The sovereign state of Costa Rica is a unitary presidential constitutional republic. It is known for its long-standing and stable democracy, and for its highly educated workforce, most of whom speak English. The country spends roughly 6.9% of its budget, 2016, on education, compared to a global average of 4.4%. Its economy, once heavily dependent on agriculture, has diversified to include sectors such as finance, corporate services for foreign companies, pharmaceuticals, and ecotourism. Many foreign manufacturing and services companies operate in Costa Rica's free trade zones, FTZ, where they benefit from investment in tax incentives. Costa Rica was facing a market liquidity crisis in 2017 due to a growing debt and budget deficit. By August 2017, the Treasury was having difficulty paying its obligations. Other challenges facing the country in its attempts to improve the economy by increasing foreign investment include a poor infrastructure and a need to improve public sector efficiency. Costa Rica was sparsely inhabited by indigenous peoples before coming under Spanish rule in the 16th century. It remained a peripheral colony of the empire until independence as part of the First Mexican Empire, followed by membership in the United Provinces of Central America, from which it formally declared independence in 1847. Since then, Costa Rica has remained among the most stable, prosperous, and progressive nations in Latin America. Following the brief Costa Rican Civil War, it permanently abolished its army in 1949, becoming one of only a few sovereign nations without a standing army. The country has consistently performed favorably in the Human Development Index, HDI, placing 69th in the world as of 2015, among the highest of any Latin American nation. It has also been cited by the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, as having attained much higher human development than other countries at the same income levels, with a better record on human development and inequality than the median of the region. Costa Rica also has progressive environmental policies. It is the only country to meet all 5 UNDP criteria established to measure environmental sustainability. It was ranked 42nd in the world, and 3rd in the Americas, in the 2016 Environmental Performance Index, and was twice ranked the best performing country in the New Economics Foundation's, NEF, Happy Planet Index, which measures environmental sustainability, and was identified by the NEF as the greenest country in the world in 2009. Costa Rica plans to become a carbon-neutral country by 2021. By 2016, 98.1% of its electricity was generated from green sources, particularly hydro, solar, geothermal and biomass. A stone sphere created by the Diquis culture at the National Museum of Costa Rica. The sphere is the icon of the country's cultural identity. Historians have classified the indigenous people of Costa Rica as belonging to the intermediate area, where the peripheries of the Mesoamerican and Andean native cultures overlapped. More recently, pre-Columbian Costa Rica has also been described as part of the Isthmo-Colombian area. Stone tools, the oldest evidence of human occupation in Costa Rica, are associated with the arrival of various groups of hunter-gatherers about 10,000 to 7,000 years BCE in the Turalba Valley. The presence of Clovis culture type spearheads and arrows from South America opens the possibility that, in this area, two different cultures coexisted. Agriculture became evident in the populations that lived in Costa Rica about 5,000 years ago. They mainly grew tubers and roots. For the 1st and 2nd millennia BCE there were already settled farming communities. These were small and scattered, although the timing of the transition from hunting and gathering to agriculture as the main livelihood in the territory is still unknown. The earliest use of pottery appears around 2000 to 3000 BCE. Shards of pots, cylindrical vases, platters, gourds and other forms of vases decorated with grooves prints, and some modeled after animals have been found. The impact of indigenous peoples on modern Costa Rican culture has been relatively small compared to other nations, since the country lacked a strong native civilization to begin with. Most of the native population was absorbed into the Spanish-speaking colonial society through intermarriage, except for some small remnants, the most significant of which are the Bribri and Boruca tribes who still inhabit the mountains of the Cordillera de Talamanca, in the southeastern part of Costa Rica, near the frontier with Panama. The name La Costa Rica, meaning rich coast in the Spanish language, was in some accounts first applied by Christopher Columbus, who sailed to the eastern shores of Costa Rica during his final voyage in 1502, and reported vast quantities of gold jewelry worn by natives. The name may also have come from conquistador Gil Gonzalez de Villa, who landed on the west coast in 1522, encountered natives, and appropriated some of their gold. The Uaras historical site in the Orosi Valley, Cartago province. The church was built between 1686 and 1693. During most of the colonial period, Costa Rica was the southernmost province of the Captaincy General of Guatemala, nominally part of the Viceroyalty of New Spain. In practice, the Captaincy General was a largely autonomous entity within the Spanish Empire. Costa Rica's distance from the capital of the Captaincy in Guatemala, its legal prohibition under Spanish law from trade with its southern neighbor Panama, then part of the Viceroyalty of New Granada, i.e., Colombia, and lack of resources such as gold and silver, made Costa Rica into a poor, isolated, and sparsely inhabited region within the Spanish Empire. Costa Rica was described as the poorest and most miserable Spanish colony in all America by a Spanish governor in 1719. Another important factor behind Costa Rica's poverty was the lack of a significant indigenous population available for encomienda, forced labor, which meant most of the Costa Rican settlers had to work on their own land, preventing the establishment of large haciendas, plantations. For all these reasons, Costa Rica was, by and large, unappreciated and overlooked by the Spanish crown and left to develop on its own. The circumstances during this period are believed to have led to many of the idiosyncrasies for which Costa Rica has become known, while concomitantly setting the stage for Costa Rica's development as a more egalitarian society than the rest of its neighbors. Costa Rica became a rural democracy, with no oppressed mestizo or indigenous class. It was not long before Spanish settlers turned to the hills, where they found rich volcanic soil and a milder climate than that of the lowlands. Like the rest of Central America, Costa Rica never fought for independence from Spain. On the 15th of September 1821, after the final Spanish defeat in the Mexican War of Independence, 1810-21, the authorities in Guatemala declared the independence of all of Central America. That date is still celebrated as Independence Day in Costa Rica, even though, technically, under the Spanish Constitution of 1812 that had been readopted in 1820, Nicaragua and Costa Rica had become an autonomous province with its capital in León. Upon independence, Costa Rican authorities faced the issue of officially deciding the future of the country. Two bands formed, the Imperialists, defended by Cartago and Heredia cities, which were in favor of joining the Mexican Empire, and the Republicans, represented by the cities of San Jose and Alajuela, who defended full independence. Because of the lack of agreement on these two possible outcomes, the First Civil War of Costa Rica occurred. The Battle of Ocomogo took place on the hill of Ocomogo, located in the Central Valley in 1823. The conflict was won by the Republicans and, as a consequence, the city of Cartago lost its status as the capital, which moved to San Jose. The 1849 National Coat of Arms was featured in the first postal stamp issued in 1862. In 1838, long after the Federal Republic of Central America ceased to function in practice, Costa Rica formally withdrew and proclaimed itself sovereign. The considerable distance and poor communication routes between Guatemala City and the Central Plateau, where most of the Costa Rican population lived then and still lives now, meant the local population had little allegiance to the federal government in Guatemala. From colonial times to now, Costa Rica's reluctance to become economically tied with the rest of Central America has been a major obstacle to efforts for greater regional integration. Coffee was first planted in Costa Rica in 1808, and by the 1820s, it surpassed tobacco, sugar, and cacao as a primary export. Coffee production remained Costa Rica's principal source of wealth well into the 20th century, creating a wealthy class of growers, the so-called coffee barons. The revenue helped to modernize the country. Most of the coffee exported was grown around the main centers of population in the Central Plateau and then transported by ox cart to the Pacific port of Punta Arenas after the main road was built in 1846. By the mid-1850s, the main market for coffee was Britain. It soon became a high priority to develop an effective transportation route from the Central Plateau to the Atlantic Ocean. For this purpose, in the 1870s, the Costa Rican government contracted with U.S. businessman Minor C. Keith to build a railroad from San Jose to the Caribbean port of Limon. Despite enormous difficulties with construction, disease, and financing, the railroad was completed in 1890. Most Afro-Costa Ricans descend from Jamaican immigrants who worked in the construction of that railway and now make up about 3% of Costa Rica's population. U.S. convicts, Italians and Chinese immigrants also participated in the construction project. In exchange for completing the railroad, the Costa Rican government granted Keith large tracts of land and a lease on the train route, which he used to produce bananas and export them to the United States. As a result, bananas came to rival coffee as the principal Costa Rican export, while foreign-owned corporations, including the United Fruit Company later, began to hold a major role in the national economy and eventually became a symbol of the exploitative export economy. The major labor dispute between the peasants and the United Fruit Company, the Great Banana Strike, was a major event in the country's history and was an important step that would eventually lead to the formation of effective trade unions in Costa Rica, as the company was required to sign a collective agreement with its workers in 1938. Historically, Costa Rica has generally enjoyed greater peace and more consistent political stability than many of its fellow Latin American nations. Since the late 19th century, however, Costa Rica has experienced two significant periods of violence. In 1917-19, General Federico Tinoco Granados ruled as a military dictator until he was overthrown and forced into exile. The unpopularity of Tinoco's regime led, after he was overthrown, to a considerable decline in the size, wealth, and political influence of the Costa Rican military. In 1948, José Figueres Ferrer led an armed uprising in the wake of a disputed presidential election between Rafael Angel Calderón Guardia, who had been president between 1940 and 1944, and Otilio Ulate Blanco. With more than 2,000 dead, the resulting 44-day Costa Rican Civil War was the bloodiest event in Costa Rica during the 20th century. The victorious rebels formed a government junta that abolished the military altogether, and oversaw the drafting of a new constitution by a democratically elected assembly. Having enacted these reforms, the junta transferred power to Ulate on the 8th of November 1949. After the coup d'état, Figueres became a national hero, winning the country's first democratic election under the new constitution in 1953. Since then, Costa Rica has held 14 presidential elections, the latest in 2018. With uninterrupted democracy dating back to at least 1948, the country is the region's most stable. Costa Rica is located on the Central American Isthmus, lying between latitudes 8 degrees and 12 degrees N, and longitudes 82 degrees and 86 degrees W. It borders the Caribbean Sea, to the east, and the Pacific Ocean, to the west, with a total of 1,290 kilometers, 800 miles, of coastline, 212 kilometers, 132 miles, on the Caribbean coast and 1,016 kilometers, 631 miles, on the Pacific. Costa Rica also borders Nicaragua to the north, 309 kilometers or 192 miles of border, and Panama to the south-southeast, 330 kilometers or 210 miles of border. In total, Costa Rica comprises 51,100 square kilometers, 19,700 square miles, plus 589 square kilometers, 227 square miles, of territorial waters. The highest point in the country is Cerro Chirripó, at 3,819 meters, 12,530 feet. It is the fifth highest peak in Central America. The highest volcano in the country is the Irazu volcano, 3,431 m or 11,257 feet, and the largest lake is Lake Arenal. There are 14 known volcanoes in Costa Rica, and 6 of them have been active in the last 75 years. The country has also experienced at least 10 earthquakes of magnitude 5.7 or higher, 3 of magnitude 7.0 or higher, in the last century. Costa Rica also comprises several islands. Cocos Island, 24 square kilometers or 9.3 square miles, stands out because of its distance from the continental landmass, 480 kilometers, 300 miles, from Punta Arenas, but Isla Calero is the largest island of the country, 151.6 square kilometers or 58.5 square miles. Over 25% of Costa Rica's national territory is protected by SINAC, the National System of Conservation Areas, which oversees all of the country's protected areas. Costa Rica also possesses the greatest density of species in the world. Because Costa Rica is located between 8 and 12 degrees north of the equator, the climate is tropical year-round. However, the country has many microclimates depending on elevation, rainfall, topography, and by the geography of each particular region. Costa Rica's seasons are defined by how much rain falls during a particular period. The year can be split into 2 periods, the dry season known to the residents as summer, verano, and the rainy season, known locally as winter, invierno. The summer or dry season goes from December to April, and winter or rainy season goes from May to November, which almost coincides with the Atlantic hurricane season, and during this time, it rains constantly in some regions. The location receiving the most rain is the Caribbean slopes of the Cordillera Central Mountains, with an annual rainfall of over 5,000 millimeters, 196.9 in. Humidity is also higher on the Caribbean side than on the Pacific side. The mean annual temperature on the coastal lowlands is around 27 degrees C, 81 degrees F, 20 degrees C, 68 degrees F, in the main populated areas of the Cordillera Central, and below 10 degrees C, 50 degrees F, on the summits of the highest mountains. Costa Rica is home to a rich variety of plants and animals. While the country has only about 0.03% of the world's landmass, it contains 5% of the world's biodiversity. Around 25% of the country's land area is in protected national parks and protected areas, the largest percentage of protected areas in the world, developing world average 13%, developed world average 8%. Costa Rica has successfully managed to diminish deforestation from some of the worst rates in the world from 1973 to 1989, to almost zero by 2005. One national park, the Corcovado National Park, is internationally renowned among ecologists for its biodiversity, including big cats and tapirs, and is where visitors can expect to see an abundance of wildlife. Corcovado is the one park in Costa Rica where all 4 Costa Rican monkey species can be found. These include the white-headed capuchin, the mantled howler, the endangered Geoffroy's spider monkey, and the Central American squirrel monkey, found only on the Pacific coast of Costa Rica and a small part of Panama, and considered endangered until 2008, when its status was upgraded to vulnerable. Deforestation, illegal pet trading, and hunting are the main reasons for its threatened status. Tortuguero National Park, the name Tortuguero can be translated as full of turtles, is home to spider, howler, and white-throated capuchin monkeys, the 3-toed sloth and 2-toed sloth, 320 species of birds, and a variety of reptiles. The park is recognized for the annual nesting of the endangered green turtle, and is the most important nesting site for the species. Giant leatherback, hawksbill, and loggerhead turtles also nest there. The Monteverde Cloud Forest Reserve is home to about 2,000 plant species, including numerous orchids. Over 400 types of birds and more than 100 species of mammals can be found there. Over 840 species of birds have been identified in Costa Rica. As is the case in much of Central America, the avian species in Costa Rica are a mix of North and South American species. The country's abundant fruit trees, many of which bear fruit year-round, are hugely important to the birds, some of whom survive on diets that consist only of 1 or 2 types of fruit. Some of the country's most notable avian species include the resplendent quetzal, scarlet macaw, three-walled bellbird, bare-necked umbrella bird, and the keel-billed toucan. The Instituto Nacional de Biodiversidad is allowed to collect royalties on any biological discoveries of medical importance. Costa Rica is a center of biological diversity for reptiles and amphibians, including the world's fastest running lizard, the spiny-tailed iguana, Dinosaurus similis, an Intel microprocessor facility in Costa Rica that was, at one time, responsible for 20% of Costa Rican exports and 5% of the country's GDP. The country has been considered economically stable with moderate inflation, estimated at 2.6% in 2017, and moderately high growth in GDP, which increased from $41.3 billion in 2011 to $52.6 billion in 2015. The estimated GDP for 2017 is $61.5 billion and the estimated GDP per capita, purchasing power parity, is $12,382. The growing debt and budget deficit are the country's primary concerns. That is a primary reason why the major credit rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's and Fitch, have downgraded Costa Rica's risk ratings. For example, Moody's Investors Service in early 2017 reduced the rating to bar 2 from bar 1, with a negative outlook due to the rising government debt burden and persistently high fiscal deficit, which was 5.2% of GDP in 2016, and the lack of political consensus to implement measures to reduce the fiscal deficit will result in further pressure on the government's debt ratios. The country is currently debating major fiscal reform legislation to cut the budget deficits and stop the growth in debt, one of the highest in Latin America. Many foreign companies, manufacturing and services, operating Costa Rica's free trade zones, FTZ, where they benefit from investment in tax incentives. Well over half of that type of investment has come from the US according to the government. The zones supported over 82,000 direct jobs and 43,000 indirect jobs in 2015. Companies with facilities in the America Free Zone in Heredia, for example, include Intel, Dell, HP, Bayer, Bosch, DHL, IBM and OK Industries. Of the GDP, 5.5% is generated by agriculture, 18.6% by industry and 75.9% by services. 2016, agriculture employs 12.9% of the labor force, industry 18.57%, services 69.02%. 2016, for the region, its unemployment level is moderately high, 8.2% in 2016, according to the IMF. Although 20.5% of the population lives below the poverty line, 2017, Costa Rica has one of the highest standards of living in Central America. High-quality healthcare is provided by the government at low cost to the users. Housing is also very affordable. Costa Rica is recognized in Latin America for the quality of its educational system. Because of its educational system, Costa Rica has one of the highest literacy rates in Latin America, 97%. General basic education is mandatory and provided without cost to the user. A U.S. government report confirms that the country has historically placed a high priority on education and the creation of a skilled workforce, but notes that the high school dropout rate is increasing. As well, Costa Rica would benefit from more courses in languages such as English, Portuguese, Mandarin and French, and also in science, technology, engineering and math, STEM. The International Monetary Fund stated in June 2017 that annual growth in the economy was just over 4% and that the financial system was sound. The IMF expressed concern, however, about increasing deficits in public debt as well as the heavy dollarization of bank assets and liabilities. Costa Rica's public debt is problematic, especially as a percentage of the GDP, increasing from 29.8% in 2011 to 40.8% in 2015. Of the proposed 2017 budget, as $15.9 billion, debt payments account for one-third of the total and a full 46% of the budget will require financing. That will increase the deficit and the debt owed to foreign entities. The value of the Costa Rican colón per $1 was 526.46 cents on the 27th of March 2015. At the end of July 2017, the value was 563 cents. A 2017 study by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development warned that reducing the foreign debt must be a very high priority for the government. Other fiscal reforms were also recommended to moderate the budget deficit. The IMF also recommended debt reduction, with specific suggestions. In early August 2017, President Luis Guillermo Solís admitted that the country was facing a liquidity crisis and promised that a higher VAT tax and higher income tax rates were being considered by his government. Such steps are essential, Luis Guillermo Solís told the nation, because it was facing difficulties in paying its obligations and guaranteeing the provision of services. Solís explained that the Treasury will prioritize payments on the public debt first, then salaries, and then pensions. The subsequent priorities include transfers to institutions, according to their social urgency. All of the payments will be made only if funds are available. Costa Rica has free trade agreements with many countries, including the US. There are no significant trade barriers that would affect imports, and the country has been lowering its tariffs in accordance with other Central American countries. The country's free trade zones provide incentives for manufacturing and service industries to operate in Costa Rica. In 2015, the zones supported over 82,000 direct jobs and 43,000 indirect jobs in 2015, and average wages in the FDZ were 1.8 times greater than the average for private enterprise work in the rest of the country. In 2016, Amazon.com, for example, had some 3,500 employees in Costa Rica and planned to increase that by 1,500 in 2017, making it an important employer. The central location provides access to American markets and direct ocean access to Europe and Asia. The most important exports in 2015, in order of dollar value, were medical instruments, bananas, tropical fruits, integrated circuits, and orthopedic appliances. Total imports in that year were $15 billion. The most significant products imported in 2015, in order of dollar value, were refined petroleum, automobiles, packaged medications, broadcasting equipment, and computers. The total exports were $12.6 billion for a trade deficit of $2.39 billion in 2015. Pharmaceuticals, financial outsourcing, software development, and ecotourism have become the prime industries in Costa Rica's economy. High levels of education among its residents make the country an attractive investing location. Since 1999, tourism earns more foreign exchange than the combined exports of the country's three main cash crops, bananas and pineapples especially, but also other crops, including coffee. Coffee production played a key role in Costa Rica's history, and in 2006, was the third cash crop export. As a small country, Costa Rica now provides under 1% of the world's coffee production. In 2015, the value of coffee exports was $305.9 million, a small part of the total agricultural exports of $2.7 billion. Coffee production increased by 13.7% in 2015 to 16, declined by 17.5% in 2016 to 17, but was expected to increase by about 15% in the subsequent year. Costa Rica has developed a system of payments for environmental services. Similarly, Costa Rica has a tax on water pollution to penalize businesses and homeowners that dump sewage, agricultural chemicals, and other pollutants into waterways. In May 2007, the Costa Rican government announced its intentions to become 100% carbon neutral by 2021. By 2015, 93% of the country's electricity came from renewable sources. In 2016, the country produced 98% of its electricity from renewable sources and ran completely on renewable sources for 110 continuous days. In 1996, the Forest Law was enacted to provide direct financial incentives to landowners for the provision of environmental services. This helped reorient the forestry sector away from commercial timber production and the resulting deforestation, and helped create awareness of the services it provides for the economy and society, i.e., carbon fixation, hydrological services such as producing fresh drinking water, biodiversity protection, and provision of scenic beauty. The ports, roads, railways and water delivery systems would benefit from major upgrading, a concern voiced by other reports too. Attempts by China to invest in upgrading such aspects were stalled by bureaucratic and legal concerns. The bureaucracy is often slow and cumbersome. Poa's volcano crater is one of the country's main tourist attractions. Costa Rica is the most visited nation in the Central American region, with 2.9 million foreign visitors in 2016, up 10% from 2015. In 2015, the tourism sector was responsible for 5.8% of the country's GDP, or $3.4 billion. In 2016, the highest number of tourists came from the United States, with 1 million visitors, followed by Europe with 434,884 arrivals. According to Costa Rica Vacations, once tourists arrive in the country, 22% go to Tamarindo, 18% go to Arenal, 17% pass through Liberia, where the Daniel Oduber Quiros International Airport is located, 16% go to San Jose, the country's capital, passing through Juan Santa Maria International Airport, while 18% choose Manuel Antonio and 7% Monteverde. By 2004, tourism was generating more revenue in foreign exchange than bananas and coffee combined. In 2016, the World Travel and Tourism Council's estimates indicated a direct contribution to the GDP of 5.1% and 110,000 direct jobs in Costa Rica. The total number of jobs indirectly supported by tourism was 271,000. A pioneer of ecotourism, Costa Rica draws many tourists to its extensive series of national parks and other protected areas. In the 2011 Travel and Tourism Competitiveness Index, Costa Rica ranked 44th in the world and second among Latin American countries after Mexico in 2011. By the time of the 2017 report, the country had reached 38th place, slightly behind Panama. The Ethical Traveler groups 10 countries on their 2017 list of the world's 10 best ethical destinations includes Costa Rica. The country scored highest in environmental protection among the winners. Costa Rica began reversing deforestation in the 1990s, and they are moving towards using only renewable energy. Costa Rica is an active member of the United Nations and the Organization of American States, the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, and the United Nations University of Peace are based in Costa Rica. It is also a member of many other international organizations related to human rights and democracy, such as the Community of Democracies. A main foreign policy objective of Costa Rica is to foster human rights and sustainable development as a way to secure stability and growth. Costa Rica is a member of the International Criminal Court, without a bilateral immunity agreement of protection for the United States military, as covered under Article 98. Costa Rica is an observer of the Organization Internationale de la Francophonie. On the 10th of September 1961, some months after Fidel Castro declared Cuba a socialist state, Costa Rican President Mario Echeandía ended diplomatic relations with Cuba through Executive Decree No. 2. This freeze lasted 47 years until President Oscar Arias Sanchez re-established normal relations on the 18th of March 2009, saying, "If we have been able to turn the page with regimes as profoundly different to our reality as occurred with the USSR or, more recently, with the Republic of China, how would we not do it with a country that is geographically and culturally much nearer to Costa Rica?" Arias announced that both countries would exchange ambassadors. Costa Rica has a long-term disagreement with Nicaragua over the San Juan River, which defines the border between the two countries, and Costa Rica's rights of navigation on the river. In 2010, there was also a dispute around Isla Calero and the impact of Nicaraguan dredging of the river in that area. On the 14th of July 2009, the International Court of Justice in The Hague upheld Costa Rica's navigation rights for commercial purposes to subsistence fishing on their side of the river. An 1858 treaty extended navigation rights to Costa Rica, but Nicaragua denied passenger travel and fishing were part of the deal. The court ruled Costa Ricans on the river were not required to have Nicaraguan tourist cards or visas, as Nicaragua argued, but, in a nod to the Nicaraguans, ruled that Costa Rican boats and passengers must stop at the first and last Nicaraguan port along their route. They must also have an identity document or passport. Nicaragua can also impose timetables on Costa Rican traffic. Nicaragua may require Costa Rican boats to display the flag of Nicaragua, but may not charge them for departure clearance from its ports. These were all specific items of contention brought to the court in the 2005 filing. On the 1st of June 2007, Costa Rica broke diplomatic ties with Taiwan, switching recognition to the People's Republic of China. Costa Rica was the first of the Central American nations to do so. President Oscar Arias Sanchez admitted the action was a response to economic exigency. In response, the PRC built a new, $100 million, state-of-the-art football stadium in Parque La Sabana, in the province of San Jose. Approximately 600 Chinese engineers and laborers took part in this project, and it was inaugurated in March 2011, with a match between the national teams of Costa Rica and China. Costa Rica finished a term on the United Nations Security Council, having been elected for a non-renewable, 2-year term in the 2007 election. Its term expired on the 31st of December 2009. This was Costa Rica's third time on the Security Council. Elaine White Gomez is the permanent representative of Costa Rica to the UN office at Geneva, 2017, and president of the United Nations Conference to negotiate a legally binding instrument to prohibit nuclear weapons. The 2011 census counted a population of 4.3 million people distributed among the following groups: 83.6% whites or mestizos, 6.7% mulattoes, 2.4% Native American, 1.1% Black or Afro-Caribbean. The census showed 1.1% as other, 2.9%, 141,304 people, as none, and 2.2%, 107,196 people, as unspecified. By 2016, the UN estimation for the population was around 4.9 million. In 2011, there were over 104,000 Native American or indigenous inhabitants, representing 2.4% of the population. Most of them live in secluded reservations, distributed among 8 ethnic groups: Quitarisi, in the Central Valley, Matambu or Cretega, Guanacaste, Malechu, Northern Alajuela, Bribri, Southern Atlantic, Cabeca, Cordillera de Talamanca, Guaymi, Southern Costa Rica, along the Panama border, Boruca, Southern Costa Rica, and Teraba, Southern Costa Rica. The population includes European Costa Ricans, of European ancestry, primarily of Spanish descent, with significant numbers of Italian, German, English, Dutch, French, Irish, Portuguese, and Polish families, as well as a sizable Jewish community. The majority of the Afro-Costa Ricans are Creole English-speaking descendants of 19th-century Black Jamaican immigrant workers. The 2011 census classified 83.6% of the population as white or mestizo. The latter are persons of combined European and Amerindian descent. The mulatto segment, mix of white and black, represented 6.7%, and indigenous people made up 2.4% of the population. Native and European mixed-blood populations are far less than in other Latin American countries. Exceptions are Guanacaste, where almost half the population is visibly mestizo, a legacy of the more pervasive unions between Spanish colonists and Cretega Amerindians through several generations, and Limon, where the vast majority of the Afro-Costa Rican community lives. Costa Rica hosts many refugees, mainly from Colombia and Nicaragua. As a result of that and illegal immigration, an estimated 10 to 15%, 400,000 to 600,000, of the Costa Rican population is made up of Nicaraguans. Some Nicaraguans migrate for seasonal work opportunities and then return to their country. Costa Rica took in many refugees from a range of other Latin American countries fleeing civil wars and dictatorships during the 1970s and 1980s, notably from Chile and Argentina, as well as people from El Salvador who fled from guerrillas and government death squads. According to the World Bank, In 2010, about 489,200 immigrants lived in the country, many from Nicaragua, Panama, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and Belize, while 125,306 Costa Ricans live abroad in the United States, Panama, Nicaragua, Spain, Mexico, Canada, Germany, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, and Ecuador. The number of migrants declined in later years, but in 2015, there were some 420,000 immigrants in Costa Rica, and the number of asylum seekers, mostly from Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala and Nicaragua, rose to more than 110,000, a five-fold increase from 2012. In 2016, the country was called a magnet for migrants from South and Central America and other countries who were hoping to reach the U.S. Christianity is Costa Rica's predominant religion, with Roman Catholicism being the official state religion according to the 1949 Constitution, which at the same time guarantees freedom of religion. It is the only state in the Americas which established Roman Catholicism as its state religion. Other such countries are microstates in Europe: Liechtenstein, Monaco, the Vatican City and Malta. The Latino Barometro survey of 2017 found that 57% of the population identify themselves as Roman Catholics, 25% are evangelical Protestants, 15% report that they do not have a religion, and 2% declare that they belong to another religion. This survey indicated a decline in the share of Catholics and rise in the share of Protestants and irreligious. A University of Costa Rica survey of 2018 shows similar rates: 52% Catholics, 25% Protestants, 17% irreligious and 3% other. The rate of secularism is high by Latin American standards. Due to small, but continuous, immigration from Asia and the Middle East, other religions have grown, the most popular being Buddhism, with about 100,000 practitioners, over 2% of the population. Most Buddhists are members of the Han Chinese community of about 40,000 with some new local converts. There is also a small Muslim community of about 500 families, or 0.001% of the population. The synagogue Sha'arei Zion Synagogue is near La Sabana Metropolitan Park in San Jose. Several homes in the neighborhood east of the park display the Star of David and other Jewish symbols. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints claims more than 35,000 members, and has a temple in San Jose that served as a regional worship center for Costa Rica. However, they represent less than 1% of the population. The primary language spoken in Costa Rica is Spanish, which features characteristics distinct to the country, a form of Central American Spanish. Costa Rica is a linguistically diverse country and home to at least 5 living local indigenous languages spoken by the descendants of pre-Columbian peoples: Meleku, Cabeca, Bribri, Guaymi, and Buglia. Of native languages still spoken, primarily in indigenous reservations, the most numerically important are the Bribri, Meleku, Cabeca and Gabi languages. Some of these have several thousand speakers in Costa Rica while others have a few hundred. Some languages, such as Taraib and Boruca, have fewer than 1,000 speakers. The Bugli language and the closely related Guaymi are spoken by some in southeast Punta Arenas. A Creole English language, Jamaican Patois, also known as Makatliu, is an English-based Creole language spoken by the Afro-Carib immigrants who have settled primarily in Limon Province along the Caribbean coast. About 10.7% of Costa Rica's adult population, 18 or older, also speaks English, 0.7% French, and 0.3% speaks Portuguese or German as a second language. Las Caritas, ox carts, are a national symbol. Costa Rica was the point where the Mesoamerican and South American native cultures met. The northwest of the country, the Nicoya Peninsula, was the southernmost point of Nahuatl cultural influence when the Spanish conquerors, conquistadors, came in the 16th century. The central and southern portions of the country had Chibcha influences. The Atlantic coast, meanwhile, was populated with African workers during the 17th and 18th centuries. As a result of the immigration of Spaniards, their 16th century Spanish culture and its evolution marked everyday life and culture until today, with Spanish language and the Catholic religion as primary influences. The Department of Culture, Youth, and sports is in charge of the promotion and coordination of cultural life. The work of the department is divided into direction of culture, visual arts, scenic arts, music, patrimony and the system of libraries. Permanent programs, such as the National Symphony Orchestra of Costa Rica and the Youth Symphony Orchestra, are conjunctions of two areas of work, culture and youth. Dance-oriented genres, such as soca, salsa, bachata, merengue, cumbia and Costa Rican swing are enjoyed increasingly by older rather than younger people. The guitar is popular, especially as an accompaniment to folk dances. However, the marimba was made the national instrument. In November 2017, National Geographic magazine named Costa Rica as the happiest country in the world. The article included this summary: Costa Ricans enjoy the pleasure of living daily life to the fullest in a place that mitigates stress and maximizes joy. It is not surprising then that one of the most recognizable phrases among Ticos is pura vida, pure life in the literal translation. It reflects the inhabitants' philosophy of life, denoting a simple life, free of stress, a positive, relaxed feeling. The expression is used in various contexts in conversation. Often, people walking down the streets or buying food at shops say hello by saying pura vida. It can be phrased as a question or as an acknowledgement of one's presence. A recommended response to "How are you?" would be pura vida. In that usage, it might be translated as awesome, indicating that all is very well. When used as a question, the connotation would be everything is going well, or how are you? Costa Rica rates 12th on the 2017 Happy Planet Index in the World Happiness Report by the UN, but the country is said to be the happiest in Latin America. Reasons include the high level of social services, the caring nature of its inhabitants, long life expectancy and relatively low corruption. Costa Rican cuisine is a blend of Native American, Spanish,